Shabbat Shalom, my friends. Welcome back to a safe place where ancient texts reveal their contemporary relevance, and as a community, we deepen our own knowledge. Our Sedra is TEZTAVEH, Exodus chapter 27, verse 20 and following. We are moving toward the end of the book of Exodus, even as we are closing out the month of February together with its extra day. Our Sedra appears to be very straightforward. The subject matter is not new to us, nor is it particularly astonishing. A light is to be kept burning, a ner tamid, before God eternally. The high priest, the Kohen Gadol, is to receive very special garments with unique appurtenances. There are the Urim and Tumim, devices that somehow provide access to the divine will. There are also the bells and the pomegranates that were attached to the very bottom of the priest's robe. And there are sacrifices to be brought and, of course, celebrations to be scheduled. An ordination ceremony is mandated by God in which the high priest is sanctified by the placing of holy oil on his head. I guess the good news here is that the Israelites, unlike the Egyptians, chose not to use animal fat as the vehicle of ordination. I don't know what kinds of heavy-duty shampoos were available in the Sinai desert at that time. The high priest was to wear a breastplate which had 12 stones on it, one stone for each of the tribes of Israel. It must have been quite a magnificent costume. There was a diadem or a headdress that was placed upon the high priest, in no small way indicating the power that was being invested in him. The sons of Aaron were destined to become regular Kohanim, not Kohen Gadol, regular priests, so they would have unique clothing of their own as well, with tunics and sashes and turbans. All of the priests were required to wear linen trousers, probably a pushback against the practices of certain ancient civilizations which had the priests involve nudity in the carrying out of certain of their functions. Think for a moment here. Something is missing. The high priest has his own special garments. The younger priests had garments of their own. But what about Moses? What special garments did he have? What moment of ordination was symbolized by crowns or jewels or special robes? What sacrifices did Moses have to offer to assume and to affirm his position? And how did Moses feel when he was responsible for bringing magnificence to his brother, with bells chiming off the edges of his brother's robe, while Moses was dressed as simply as he always was? How did it happen that our Sedra is the only one in the last 4 books of the Torah that does not mention Moses by name? We assume Moses' presence, but his name is not set out before us. The rabbis in multiple midrashim create scenarios in which we see Moses shortly before the ordination ceremonies are mandated for Aaron. Moses was quietly thinking to himself at that time, well, this is it. I am, after all, God's chosen leader. I will become the high priest. I will become king. I will be the leader of the people through the desert. Zemagiali. It's owed to me. Then the shocking and most unwelcome message came. There would be no real king until the time of King David. Now, Moses would indeed be the leader of the people through the wilderness, but unbelievably, the priesthood would go through Aaron and Aaron's sons, and Moses and his family would be excluded forever. Aviva Zornberg portrays this moment as a betrayal that cannot be exaggerated. Moses was the closest of all to God. They had a unique and transformative relationship, and as payback, God is seemingly saying to Moses, "You are close, but come no closer." God's will and human desire could not have been more obviously in tension. Now you may say that, okay, it's true that Aaron gets all the fancy clothing, but hey, that's all that stuff is, fancy clothing. Yet we learn something very interesting at the time of Aaron's death. We are told in the book of Numbers that Aaron and Moses go off to a secluded place, and Aaron is required to remove his garments of glory to give them to Moses, who would then place them on Aaron's son. Now Aaron dies, and Moses then buries him. But when Moses dies, he dies alone, still in the presence of God. And God will bury Moses. No one else is there. So having those garments was no small matter. In fact, the Torah makes amply clear that without those robes and turbans and breastplates, the high priest was actually not allowed to officiate. No garments, no service. And the clothing must be made with full intentionality, so that what is being created in the service of God. In this case, the regalia indeed proclaims the man, and Moses never received the clothing. Most frequently, the rabbis find an explanation of sorts in recalling how reluctant Moses was at the burning bush to take on the mission that God had in mind for him. As punishment for that reluctance, then, Moses would be denied the priesthood. A fascinating possibility. But think about it. Aaron never received significant punishment for his role in building the golden calf, which is going to be talked about next week. He never received significant punishment. Resistance and punishment, reluctance and penalties, and the role of self-awareness in shaping a functioning community. Zornberg teaches that for us to function at the highest level, we must know ourselves. We have identities, we have strengths, we have weaknesses, and we have the capacity to shape our own destinies. The rabbis will have us understand that the true greatness of Moses did not emerge from the encounter at the burning bush or because of the plagues or the meetings with Pharaoh. The true greatness of Moses came when he was able to bring himself to celebrate Aaron's ordination and then to accept that being the one who brings Torah to the world possesses a greater zechut, a greater merit than any robes or public postures. Moses somehow must have thought, you be the one, Aaron, who wears the vestments, that in their way connect the people to the service of God. And I will teach people how all temples and sanctuaries are finite. They will all disappear. But only Moses could bring the values and teachings and understandings that show people how to live with themselves, with others, and with God. Not one of us is a Moses. But we, like Moses, can come to understand our identities, our unique identities, and our strengths to shape our own unique destinies. And the contributions that we then make may be greater than we could ever imagine. Shabbat Shalom. See you next week.